remember it started actually when I was in a room with Tony Robbins, and he said that our brains are not designed to make us happy. They're designed to keep us alive and safe.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. Welcome back to a new episode. My guest today is Lyon Folsom. Corey, thank you for accepting my invitation.
My great pleasure to be here.
You know, you're a highly regarded love and relationship coach and the author of a very successful book, Soul Statements. And we'll discuss about all this throughout the interview. But I would like to start by asking you, what put you on your spiritual path? What was the direction?
The direction of my life's journey?
Your spiritual journey.
Oh, spiritual journey. I was raised Christian Scientist. So we grew up understanding the power of spontaneous healing, of that there's grace at work in the world for each person if we choose to accept it. And so I had that as a basis. And then as I became an adult, I spent time with a lot of Native American people and very much enjoyed their methods of praying with the Sweat Lodge, the Vision Quest, the Sundance, some other things. And so I really, and because I was a wilderness guide, I'm out in this grand landscape trudging along. I really gravitated to that earth-based kind of outlook and way of praying. So that was my spiritual path. And then when I was about 50 years old, then I discovered Tantra. And so I went to various different schools, and their basic premise is that there's a beloved that lives within, and it's about slowing down, honoring your own heart, and being present to life as it's occurring. So that's been my spiritual arc.
Interesting. And you mentioned that you were born as Christian or Catholic, and you also said about miraculous healing. Was there any correlation in your childhood between these healings and the spiritual side? What was the motivation, the cause that you were told about these healings?
I really enjoyed the thing I enjoyed most about our little church we had, they called it a society, was on Wednesday nights was a testimonial meeting. So you would go and you would sit in the pews, and there's a hymn, and then people would just stand up and say, well, this spiritual principle, this is how I applied it in my life this week, or and it affected me in a positive way. So that was something I really liked. And one time I was staying at a place, and I decided to jump in this pond to impress a girl. But what I didn't know was right under the surface of the water, there was this big rock. And so as my feet came down into the water, the top of my foot hit that rock. And I think I broke many bones in my foot. And so the kind of leader of our group wasn't there, but a friend of mine said, well, you have to go see him. And so I kind of hobbled over there. And he said, well, normally I would never do this, but if I don't do something, you will never walk properly again. And he just put his hands around my foot. And this is 10, 15 minutes later, and it had swollen up like the size of a baseball. There's this hump on top of my foot, and it was so painful. And so he held his hands there for just a few minutes. He took his hands away. There was no more bump, no more pain, run around, problem solved. And so I saw that happen in my life and to my own body. And so that made me a believer in hands-on healing. So yeah. And so that's probably the most dramatic example.
It's interesting that you were able to witness this type of energy facilitating healing on your own body. And a lot of us are wakening up these days to their own potential. And we try to learn how to do exactly what you mentioned by being the conduit for divine energy and helping others heal.
Indeed. And so my current meditation actually is trying to be still. And so I sit and I attempt to, I don't move. I just feel the stillness. That's the great stillness. And I try to match that in myself. And, though that's when we hear the whisper of spirit, because it's a whisper. And I'm also feeling my bones. And within the context of this silent state, I put my attention on my bone structure, realizing that my bones have their own wisdom. And I just say, my body knows how to heal itself. And so that I'm aligning myself with that principle, and my bones are listening.
Yes, you are right. Our body is intelligent, knows how to heal itself. And I attended breathwork sessions where after, let's say, 2, 3 hours of, no, let's say maybe an hour of continuous breathwork, the group will take a break, standing, eyes closed, just letting the body react and move and adjust to the new energies and again, heal itself. And then after the break will continue, and that will last maybe 6 hours a day, facilitating this type of own or self-healing.
Indeed, indeed. It's very powerful, especially when there's something about the power of a group with that shared intention that supercharges it, I found.
Yes. Corey, because we are in the subject of, Tantra and religion at the same time, there's something that always, bother me, at the back of my head, because we see children and especially newborns of a miracle. They are pure. They come with their own energy, but at the same time, the secular religion says that we are born in sin. How can we reconcile sexuality and spirituality and this idea that we are born in sin?
Well, being born in sin doesn't necessarily, saying it doesn't necessarily make it so. We can choose to believe that, and which can be useful if we are then using that to avail ourselves of the grace of our Creator. And so that's not it's a path to get there. We can also, like with Tantra, we have a belief that we're made by a Creator, and the Creator gave us this body, and they didn't make some parts and farm out some other parts. The Creator made all of who we are, even the parts we don't talk about very often, our sexual parts. And so that's also, if we have to accept that our life and our form is a gift from the Creator, then it's all of it. And so we say, I have a beloved that dwells within. And so I think of my heart as a beloved, and I try to build a relationship with my own heart. And so, the Creator that made your mind made your body.
Yes, and I read books about instances where, and you might correct me if I'm wrong or not, where both partners got into a trance in such a way they did not remember the act itself. It was just a beatitude, a elated state of being, of procreation. So, do you think we can call this type of state, even if it results in a pregnancy, a virgin birth?
I think we can call it a divine birth. We can, um, I know in this one tantric school that I was part of, that we had an actual ceremony for women who wanted to reclaim their virginity and remake their spirit and their and refresh their body and consider themselves as virginal, and that's possible. Um, so I think that if we accept the presence of the divine, well, wouldn't we accept it everywhere in as a ubiquitous, all-encompassing? My mom used to say, "There's not a spot where God is not." And so God, if it's either in everything or it's nothing. And so if we accept God, we really, if we thought about it, then God's everywhere,
Indeed.
omnipresent.
Yes, indeed. And sometimes I tell a short story from India, and I will repeat it here quickly, where a guru had disciples and he wanted to test their belief in God, in divine consciousness. And he said, I will give you this apple, and I want you to go and hide somewhere place where God won't see you eating the apple. And they all scatter around, and one went into a cave, one went to a hole in the ground, and then a woman, which was a woman disciple, tried to go anywhere in the cupboards, in the closet, and then they all came back to report. And she said, Master, I was not able to hide away from God. I know I felt God's presence everywhere. And she was the one who was most appreciated by the guru, because everyone else said, oh, I was in the cave and God wasn't there. I was able to eat the apple without him seeing me. So this is pretty much what your mother said as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, that's a really amazing example of just that God is everywhere, and it's just a truth. It's the part of what we live in, and part of maybe the agreement, if you will, that we're under God's care and loving protection.
Yes,
And I
and
think when we don't feel God, that's not because God went away. It's because we're, absorbed in some other self will, or circling around in our own head in some fashion.
yeah, and some people say don't give your power away, but in my opinion, when I say I surrender to God's love and light, I think is a good thing. Is not that I'm giving my power away to someone who shouldn't have it, but is someone who should fill me even more with His divine love and grace.
Yeah, because it's probably where it comes from anyway. I mean, what is actually ours? We have to give this body up, and if we align with the greatest force, call it love, then it's only that only improves whatever the situation is. And also, I just wanted to add a thought to, you mentioned about sexual union, and the way I think about sex, I think about it as an acronym, SEX, standing for Sacred Energy Exchange. And that transcendent experience that you described, I mean, that's the goal, really. Whether it's through that way, or being a hermit in a cave, or just through accepting life on life's terms. And so uh, that's a beautiful, desirable place to get to. And so I think it's valuable to hold sexual union as a holy sacrament, to um, to I know it's also a practice to when you're with your partner and you're building this love, and then at some point to offer this love out that you've created, offer it outward to the world with the intention that it goes to wherever it's most needed. And you're not going to deplete yourself by offering love, you know. And so uh, why not?
Yes.
Yeah, it only makes the world better. And so that's how I look at it. And also, and another thing too is you mentioned there that the memory of what was actually physically happening was much secondary, and was transcended by the way it felt, and where they got to in connection with the divine, with their own divine nature. And I actually mentioned it in my book that there's a tantric secret, which is stillness contains more pleasure than movement. And also in another amazing tantric practice is just to sit facing your partner, kind of uh, knees and legs intertwined, so your hearts are very close, and just gaze in each other's eyes. And it's really helpful to actually look at one eye and then she's looking at one of mine, because otherwise the eyes will dart back and forth even though you don't realize, and it's distracting for the other person. So you're each looking at one eye and just being present for that. And and so and there's other ways to breathe energy and circle and cycle energy, and that's all good too. But just the eye gazing can take you as far as any other practice
Yes.
in terms of connection with a divine source and wellhead, if you will.
And also we have to remember or remind ourselves that these teachings come from thousands of years from India, like the Vedas. So if we apply them, um, let's say, the way they were supposed to be applied, that energy will flow through our bodies, will energize us, and will achieve that connection with divinity. So always we have to be conscious on how we apply the teachings, for what purpose, in order to benefit from it.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And also one of the um, uh, techniques, if you will, with sacred energy exchange, holy union, is you can my body relax? Can it relax more? Can I get even more relaxed than this? And and there's another healing modality, the Reiki, the laying on of hands or the holding just above. And so you're extending healing energy from your palms. And but we can extend healing energy with any part of our body. We can send energy from our heart, and um, and so it's not just slowing down, but it's glowing too. So how not just how slow can I go to stillness, but how deep can I glow? Can I glow with my partner, and that my partner glows with me? And that's phenomenal too. I mean, you can do that and eye gaze at the same time. It's pretty phenomenal.
Yes, it's amazing. And again, as you said, yes, we can emanate love and energy from various parts of the body. And for me, sending out love from the heart, it's very, it is becoming easier and easier every single day because I practice, and it's an amazing feeling to have.
Well, the heart is a muscle, is it not?
Yes. And it's not only pumping blood as a lot of people think, but it's a much more than that for sure. Corey, we mentioned your successful book, Soul Statements. Why you decided to write such a book?
Well, I remember it started actually when I was in a room with Tony Robbins, and he said that our brains are not designed to make us happy. They're designed to keep us alive and safe. And so to do that, they look for what's wrong. And what's wrong is always available. However, what's right is always available too. I'm like, oh, yeah. And so with my coaching clients, I started asking them, oh, in these moments where you feel helpless or hopeless or distressed or confused, what's your brain saying right then? And they're saying, well, I can't do this, or I'm not enough, or whatever it might be. And I realized, well, we can say to ourselves on the inside, oh, you know what? I used to think that. You're talking to your own brain. I used to think that. And what's actually true is, insert soul statement, I am enough. These people are lucky to meet me. I have grit inside me. I have a loving, caring heart. I'm held in God's love. Whatever your soul statement that feels powerful and real and true for you, we can have that at the ready, hopefully usually developed through times of stillness and journaling or whatever connects you to you. So you find your soul statement, and then when you're feeling less than, you remind yourself. And so it's not, you're not having to trick your brain to some future, well, I'm going to be thinner or whatever else. It's because it's already true. You are held in God's love. You are enough. You are worthy of a place in this world. And so why not remind yourself of that right then, correct your own thinking, and then your next thought tends to be a better one. And then your next action can be informed by that. So it's an affirmation, but it's not a future. It's reminding yourself of your own resourcefulness and your own value in real time when you need it most. And that's the thing is, manners and good speech and all this stuff matters most when we least want to apply it. And so this is just a shortcut to what's real and true, and can kind of stop the downward spiral and get yourself going in a better direction.
And how do people react when you tell them that you are a love coach? Do they think, oh, I need one, I have to take a session? What's the feedback?
Well, everyone says they can benefit from it. Oh, because the subtitle of the book is A Love Coach's Guide to Successful Communication. So everyone could use better communication skills, a little more grace in how they say things or how they receive things. And so I just put a lot of profound yet simple, actionable tips to make that happen, to be a little better than you were before, all throughout. And there's a lot of journal prompts to, what feeds my spirit, and, to help you build your own sense of self and your feeling of worthiness and enoughness. And so, yeah, everyone wants better relationships. So there's a lot of yeses to that.
And it's hard for people to follow up on certain projects they start. So let's say someone will decide to take a coach session with you and maybe multiple sessions. What do you have in place in order for them to really follow up through the teachings, follow up with maybe a homework, or how do you not necessarily enforce, but how do you motivate them to stay true to their purpose?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of homework, because I can, speak to someone for an hour, and if I give them some things to work on, not just think about, then it really, deepens and makes what we talk about so much more useful. It's like, oh, this is how I can put it into practice. This is how I can begin to say things differently. This is how I can think about things differently. Because, a good coach, realizes that, like, I'll take me, for example, I don't know what's best for someone. I'm not inside their head. I didn't grow up in their neighborhood with their family, with their gender or their bullies or whatever. And so, but I can help them ask better questions of themselves. I can I can point out to them from a detached perspective, you know, these are strengths. These are things you could do more of and you could step into and own. And these are things that you could do differently in this way. And I'm not going to tell someone necessarily, you should do it this way or you should do it that way, but I'll ask them, how might that work in your life? What small thing could you do to improve this or that? And so it's really a process of helping them arrive at their answers and then supporting them in living, those informed from those answers.
And do you tell them that kindness can be also a way of healing themselves?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of building a relationship with your own wounded heart. We all have a heart that's been wounded from time to time. And so, but we can heal. Wounds, what do wounds do? They heal. They tend to heal. And so, can our heart. And we can also feel the grief and loss and pain of having abandoned our own heart, abandoned our values, oftentimes for love or connection. And we can learn to, going forward, learn to honor what our heart needs and what's best for us. And so we can, abandon ourselves less and stand up for ourselves more. And part of what makes that work is standing up for ourselves, not as a angry jerk, but as a sure knowing, I know who I am, I know my own value, and I can speak to that. I can speak to the impact on me from someone else's actions versus point my finger and say, I think you're a dummy dog. I don't like this about you or that about you. They already know what they did. They know their own motivations better than anyone else. But what they don't always know is the impact on other people. And if I can lead with that, my heart contracted, or I felt unsure or unsafe, or when this happened. And you can talk about what happened and how it felt versus what you think of the other person.
So in other words, you lead them towards more awareness.
100%.
Yes. Corey, I would like to switch to another aspect of your personality, which is, in my opinion, fascinating. You are a professional tracker, aboriginal skills instructor. So at the beginning, you mentioned that you spend time with indigenous family or, community. How did that happen?
Oh gosh, when I was 9 years old, we moved from kind of the outskirts of Boston, Massachusetts, up to small town Maine. And one of the things that was great about that was right out the back door of our house was, I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of woods and fields and a river and streams and hawks and everything else. And so I had this little mini wilderness, this forest that was so accessible. And I just fell in love with the natural world, meaning the animals and the plants. And I educated myself. Oh, that amazing sound that sounds like a gurgling waterfall of notes is a bobolink. Oh, wow. And it's not like, oh, it's a bobolink. Now I know what it is. I've objectified it. It's like, oh no, I want to know the names of my friends, you know, and I want to learn more about them. And I want to know when I hear something, who's that? And so I would get up. I was one of these weird kids who would get up before school and go out bird watching. And then I'd run back and get the bus. And so um, I just spent a lot of time out there, and it just led me to learning uh, how did peoples before the colonizers came, how did they make a go of it out here? And I wanted to know how they built shelters and how they made fire without matches, and edible plants was a big thing, and clothing and string and the whole thing, and pottery. And so I would just do that stuff, and I eventually found there's schools that teach you some of these things, and so this natural world, this interest in nature, and led me to native peoples. I had about 5 miles down from my house on this state highway there was an Indian moccasin shop, and there was an old man and his wife. His name was Les Ranco, and he was a former chief of the Penobscot tribe. And I would just go in there and just talk to him, like at least once or twice a week. I just go talk to him. And he's like 87 years old, and he'd tell me things, and so he'd tell me where I could go to pick sweetgrass, and about adventures back in the day when it was living out of canoes and everything. So it just expanded from there.
Interesting. And I usually I interviewed a lot of shamans on this podcast, and we talk about vision quest concept that is foreign to the Westerners, but very common in the indigenous world and the tribes in North America, South America, Africa, Australia even. So what type of vision quests do you do?
I did the type of vision quest. It's not a walkabout. It's where you sit in a 10-foot circle for 4 days and 3 nights, and there's no food. You do have water. There's no writing materials. There's no book. There's no fire. And so there's no food. So you're not taking all this time preparing food. There's just not a lot to do except sit there and look around and think about things. And part of the setup is that our minds, just want to go back to the same, you know, ruts, and we're like, oh, thinking about what I'm going to eat when after this is over. But eventually it's so boring to listen to your own mind that you're just like, oh, I can't stand it. But there's this magical moment where, and it kind of sneaks up on you. If you're ready for it, it's not going to happen. But all of a sudden, you drop underneath surface thinking, and that's where your soul, your spirit lives, and you're in touch with your answers, and you can just. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to interview my own gut. It's like, no, you just know things. And so, and that's the magic of the Vision Quest. It's just to get you to that point where your mind just wears itself out and you just stop thinking. So, yeah.
And what is the reaction to this type of experience?
It's so useful. It's so useful. I've put both my young sons, they're older now, but when they were younger, I put both of them on Vision Quest, and we did it a lot with our students in the field, in the wilderness, and it's so useful. And a lot of times you'll never get this again. When can you just take 4 days and just sit somewhere and be protected because there's people kind of watching over and that. And there's people beforehand to go through maybe some ritual and some preparation, and then afterwards, similar type thing. And so you can't even put a price on finding your own knowing. Yeah. And Mark Twain, the famous American author, said once, there's the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why.
Interesting, yes, indeed. And is any type of sharing at the end of the experience? Because I know during sacred plant ceremonies there is an integration period at the end where everyone shares their own experience.
Yeah, the way I prefer to do it, if we have, is a sweat lodge, and it's dark. It's like somewhat imitating a womb, and so it's it's small. You're sitting, you're in the dark, and there's very hot rocks in the center. Someone's pouring water on the rocks. So um, and we go in, and the people that are coming off Vision Quest, we don't make eye contact with them. We just lead them. Everyone's in the lodge now, and I'm usually leading it, so I'm talking, maybe I'm singing a song or two. People can Some people oftentimes know the song, we can sing some songs, but the people that have just been on Vision Quest, we're not asking them anything. They're not speaking, they're just absorbing being with human beings again. And so out of respect for them and their transition, they're just they're not acknowledged. They're able to stay silent. And then at some point, maybe a couple hours into it, then we might invite them if they would like to say something, share something with the group, then that's fine. Because, one of the benefits is like a mini hero's journey. It's the return to the community with some, kernels of information, some learning, some extra knowledge. In the Native American tradition, they say, there's the vision quest, and they say, does your vision grow corn?
Mm.
Meaning, how will you live that, and will you produce something for the people? So, another teacher I had say the reward for enlightenment is work. Meaning, oh, now I know what I'm about. Okay, now your work begins. You have something to offer. Figure out how to give that.
Yes, and even the teachers learn every single day until the day they transition. And I recently interviewed the shaman from Zimbabwe. I posted his interview the other day, and he was very humble, and he confirmed that he is learning every single day. His learning curve will never end until the last breath, and this is what he tells his students all over the world.
Yeah, indeed. I know there are people that they say, oh, I've lived 70 years, but maybe the last 50 of them were like the same year 50 times.
Yes.
And I don't relate to that, but I know for some people that's it. And yeah, I'm a voracious book reader. Uh, I, I'm just learning all the time. I'm interested in things.
Do you think that the land, you see what's going on in the world with the fires, and land management is a disaster? Do you think that we should turn this task to the indigenous people who have been taking care of the land for many, many generations?
I would say that indigenous peoples have a lot to offer, and I think it would behoove us to partner with them, to not just have them on some board or council, but actually listen to them, and 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 have their voice not just be a token on some advisory board, but actually let's apply some of this ancient wisdom now, because what we're doing isn't working.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
absolutely, we should avail ourselves of ancient wisdom and start going in a better direction. It's like I have this compulsion that I've had since I was a boy that I want to make where I am better than when I got there. And so I think that could be applied worldwide. Let's leave this planet in better shape than when it was when we showed up.
Yeah, not an easy task, that's for sure, with everything that's going on, and it's going to happen in the next decade or so. But again, we have to do our best and create our own reality that has less disasters and calamities within it.
Indeed. Indeed so. Yeah.
Corey, are you planning to add any other spiritual tools this year to your toolbox?
Well, I have a book somewhere around here. I really have been enjoying the book Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza recently, and I've kind of marked it all up, and I'm just going through those meditations. They're so fabulous, and so I'm incorporating those meditations that he describes there. I found them very powerful, and and so that's what I'm doing right now personally.
Yeah, I know my wife attended one of his workshops. It was a big one in Cancun, 2020. And one of the men which sat with her at the same table came in with a very stringent diet. He had arthritis. He could barely move his fingers. And on the fourth day, he got a big download. And he was able to eat anything before the end of the webinar. He was able to eat anything he wanted. He was able to move his fingers properly. He continued on the path with Dr. Dispenza. My wife kept in contact with him, and he's doing very well. I'm not saying that everyone will have the same healing experience, but there are these type of cases that are so willing and so open to receive the energy that they get it.
Yeah. Well, it's like and I haven't been in the military, but you know, I've been told that in the boot camp, which is oftentimes about 8 weeks, that the people who need to lose weight will lose weight. People that could stand to gain some weight gain weight, and so uh, it's just it's so unique to each person, and but getting that download is is the game changer, and finding that flow state, if you will, and that place where you can access your own knowing, and that place where you understand in the most real way that you're not separate from God. We're not separate from the earth. Our bodies are made of, calcium and blood and water, and it's like we come from the earth and our bodies will return to it, but our spirits, perhaps our home is in the stars. So uh, a lot of the coaching I do, the personal work I do, it's just to get to that place of accessing the inner knowing.
Yes, beautiful. And Corey, you mentioned that you get your miracles the moment you step into the natural cathedral, which is the forest. But have you visited other places around the world that gave you a either similar or much more powerful feeling of miracle?
There's something about the desert. And there's a desert in the southwestern United States and mostly in northern Mexico called the Sonoran Desert. And the reason it's called that is for the sonora, the sound. and there are places there are places. There's one place I like to go in Utah. It's a slot canyon, meaning it's about probably 20 feet wide, and it's only probably not quite 100 yards deep, but it's 200-300 feet tall. So it's just this slot, and if you walk in there, there's this kind of table of rock at the back, like a natural altar, and there's grooves in it from Native American, grinding whatever herb or ceremonial substance. And so it was most likely a place of prayer for them too. And when I sit in there, I hear the sonora. It's like the earth has its own hum, if you will.
Mhm.
And um, and so when I'm back home in my house, sometimes in my stillness, if I'm having trouble being as still as I would like, I'll remember. I'll remember being there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it felt like. And I can drop into that place inside me. And sometimes it's a little bit similar to when I'm body surfing in the ocean and there's an extra big wave, and I'll just go down to the sand and hold myself along while the big wave rolls over, and I listen while I'm down there. And there's a hum down there too. And so one of my soul statements that I like is, the contentment of the mountains lives inside of me. And so I can remember these times, these places, and I can be there again and feeling.
Yeah, so what you created pretty much is the equivalent of the Hawaiian secret garden where they go to calm themselves down, to reconnect with themselves. And I went through that exercise many years ago with late Hank Wesselman, who was well versed in the Hawaiian traditions.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. And Corey, if you'd have to offer humanity another gift other than what you are offering right now, what would that be?
I would say I would remind people that the hero and the coward initially feel the same thing. It's what they do next that makes them one or the other. And so we have a moment in our shared existence right now where, the planet's having some stress, political systems are having some stress, and individuals are having stress. It's like, so what we do next defines us and heals us or hurts us, or heals others or hurts others. And so, um, but we can each learn to call up the best part of us in a moment. And we can, choose a different emotional flow chart. By using soul statements, we can realign, and that next right action becomes more obvious when we're connected to our own value and what we value. And so that's the takeaway that I could think of.
Nice. And what's your intuition telling you regarding next step for humanity? Which path humanity is going to take?
My intuition says everything is all is well. Like it's like before this last American election, the night before, I don't know what's best. I don't know who's best with this, that. I just prayed that our country align with its own destiny. And and then the result was the result. I'm like, all right, well, maybe this is aligning us with our destiny, and more will be revealed.
That's for sure. 5 days to go, and then we are off to the races.
Yeah.
And Are there any other programs you like to mention for those who are going to watch the interview?
Yeah, well, this is actually my 51st podcast, and I just love talking about soul statements. And my girlfriend's written a whole bunch of very popular books, and she said, make sure you write about something you're going to want to talk about for 2 years incessantly. So I just I feel like a ambassador for soul statements because so many people are finding it so helpful to just remind themselves in real time, this is who and what and why I am. So, yeah.
And by any chance, when they do this type of exercise, do they activate their their light language as well, or it just stays at that soul level statement?
Well, you've got a good soul statement when as you declare it silently or aloud, that your cells feel like they're lighting up and they're vibrating with a yes, or maybe your bones feel more solid, or all of the above. And so you're like, yeah, that's true for me. And you know so that's, I'm bigger than any complaint. I mean, that's a great soul statement.
Exactly. Wonderful. And we are at the end of our lovely discussion. Any final words?
One of the greatest tools I have is when I feel my heart contract or feel an ouch in my heart, instead of maybe blurting out some version of I don't like this, I'm hurt, to just because just to back up a little, I teach people to acknowledge what some other person has said. You don't have to agree with it to say, oh, I get this is distressing for you. You're just acknowledging. You don't have to think they should be distressed, but they are. And so why not offer a little acknowledgement to your own heart and say, oh, I see you. That didn't feel good. I love you. And then, oftentimes putting the hand on the heart really kind of amplifies that. And then a breath. And then whatever you say next will probably be a little better than what you would have said a second or two before. So yes, acknowledge other people. First, acknowledge your own heart and say, I got you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the wise words, and all the best moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, leave a comment. Go to gnostiktv.com and YouTube for older episodes. And until next time, love and gratitude.